There's a kind of symmetry, a pendular, a pisogonic posing. The Putin, frankly, pitched at a gay audience, but of course he's done a lot of pitching in his time in that particular direction, as Belkovsky demonstrated in his book, which implied that even Alina Kabayeva was some sort of beard. I think she's long been jettisoned for a new pack of hounds. And it's a shame, perhaps, that his latest efforts towards the gay community has been so negative. But with that motion of Putin's political theatre, aggression abroad, repression at home. So it's sort of relevant. The two feed each other, and the rhythm has become pathological. Lots of P's here. What I once called Putin's pendular provocation, his desperate posing between the posture of the warlord and the insecurity of the autocrat, has reached grotesque maturity. The latest move against the anti-war committee of Russia, accused of terrorism, is not an aberration, but a symptom of a regime that has turned inward to devour its own moral nerve. It's like that sort of figure of, I can't remember whether it's death or sin at the gates of hell, with all these hounds running into its womb to devour it. So, starting with the evidence of spite, Russia's Federal Security Service, the FSB, has opened terrorism cases against 22 members of the Anti-War Committee, a body already outlawed, already anathematized, already stripped of legitimacy. It includes Mikhail Khodorkovsky, once an oil baron and now the ghostly conscience of post-Soviet liberalism. He stands accused of financing paramilitary units in Ukraine and plotting to seize power. The absurdity is obvious, but that's precisely the point. The accusation itself is the punishment. To be called a terrorist in modern Russia is to be erased from civil existence as a Russian, and so property will be seized, passports revoked, families threatened, even the exiles are not safe. Their names will be entered into the great ledger of Russia's terrorists and extremists. Yevgeny Smirnov, a human rights lawyer speaking for Medusa, described this as the latest episode in a long drama of intimidation. He noted that the FSB's move was likely a reaction to the Council of Europe's new platform for dialogue with Russian democratic forces in exile. Putin's security services are determined to make such dialogue toxic to ensure that no one in Strasbourg or Moscow can speak to the Russian opposition without contamination. And it's worth pausing on Smirnov's remark that this does not even require the Kremlin's personal attention. That is what tyranny looks like when it hardens. Repression becomes bureaucratic, self-sustaining, automatic. The FSB now acts as both accuser and executor, maintaining the illusion of legality through what Smirnov calls Russia's legal cacophony. In this world, one act of dissent can generate a dozen criminal charges. To think, to act, to speak, to write. Each is a felony waiting for its own label. And it's very similar, of course, with the Hamas attacks on its own following the Israeli retreat. And yet the public barely blinks. Everyone seems to have figured it was bound to happen, Smirnov says. That weary fatalism is the true tragedy. When the extraordinary becomes ordinary, repression is complete. There will be no new turning point, no moment when the world suddenly sees the scale of internal terror. The machinery has already normalized its own cruelty. And that is why I argued that to understand a regime, one should not only look at how it attacks others, but how it treats its own, how it devours its own. The Kraos moment, eating the dead, eating the living, eating the babies. Putin's war in Ukraine is reflected in miniature inside its own borders. The confiscations, the propaganda, the silencing, the fear. The Russian state has become a mirror of its own paranoia. Every exile, every critic, every artist who speaks the truth is branded an agent, a traitor, a terrorist. What began as political control has evolved into moral hysteria. And so we see the evidence of spite, not merely towards Ukraine or the West, but towards Russia and Russians themselves. This is a regime that despises its own people's freedom, its own artists, its own intellectuals. The arrests and trials, the property seizures, the rewriting of truth are all acts of internal vandalism. Putin's regime destroys not only opponents, but the very possibility of opposition. He fears not revolution, but relevance. And we must call this what it is, a tyranny of exhaustion. The grandeur of Soviet power has collapsed into theatre, and the carefully staged photographs of Putin riding horses, diving for amphorae, or blessing factories now look desperate, even tragic. They look like what they are, the pages from some mad magazine on the top shelf of W.H. Smith, The Hustle or something. They are the relics of a man performing virility while presiding over decay. His strength is not in control, but in fear. His power depends not on loyalty, but on terror's inertia. Are we witnessing the next phase of Russia's political repression? Possibly not, because the next phase has already arrived quietly and efficiently. What we are witnessing instead is the perfection of repression, its routine, its transformation into national policy. This is the evidence of Russia's spite and of Putin's posing. The tragedy is that the world sees it, shrugs and moves on, but history won't shrug. It will remember that a great nation was reduced to a stage set, ruled by a man too afraid to share the script, or too dead to notice. Modern Russia's tyranny is no longer spectacular, it is procedural. Its spite is not the fury of a madman, but the logic of a machine, set in motion years ago, and now fulfilling its purpose. And the lesson for the world is clear. When posturing becomes power's substitute, and fear becomes its fuel, the regime has already begun to devour itself, the regime has already begun to collapse.